Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. As always, we're grateful that everyone is joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. You go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner. It will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of that book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. The tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again, absolutely free. You can also download from that webpage a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them, even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words HeartLand Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on the glowing heart icon, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd appreciate you doing so by giving us a call. You can call us through the Needle app. If you go to your app store and type in Needle, N-E-D-L, it's an AI tuner for live radio. Download the app, open it up, log in, answer a few questions, and you'll have the option to either call us through the app voice-to-voice or type in a comment. Alternatively, you can send me an email at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, and or you could email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or a comment from you, we will address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody either emails or talks to us in a chat or phone call from the app, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service, and that is just boatloads easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. And whether that's as I'm reading a book with commentary, or we're taking calls, or we're having people actually step through the worksheet process, if any of that is of interest to you or raises questions for you, we appreciate it if you'd let us know. If you're finding it useful, if you're finding it challenging, as Michael Ryce likes to say, one of the best forces to move this work forward and to move our understanding of all of this work forward is the questions that people ask. And one of the things I've said consistently here is that if you go take a look at the audio files of past shows that have been singled out as highlight shows or best of, they're almost exclusively the result of people just like you calling in and asking a question. So please feel free to grace us with your questions, even if there's a little bit of a nervousness in you, or you think, well, this is a silly question, or you think it's too basic. There is no such thing as a question that is unproductive or unhelpful. Every question has its value, even for those of us who've been doing this work for me, over 20 years, for Dr. Michael Ryce, going on or just passing 50 years. The questions are like the cosmic grease. It's this willingness to open up and explore options to what I thought I knew. And, as I like to say, if I approach a situation thinking that I know what I know and I know how I know it and where I learned it and why it's true, there's no option for me to learn in that situation. I'm going to leave that situation knowing what I knew. But if I go into a situation with the following two observations open. The first observation is, it's quite clear to me that I don't know everything. There are things about fine dining that I don't know about and haute cuisine, and there are things about rocket science that I don't understand. There's even things about psychology and psychiatry that I haven't learned after 50 years in the field. So if I go in with this active observation that I don't know everything, and then the second observation is right there at the ready and easy to make as well, which is, since I don't know everything, whatever it is I think I know is at best only partially true and perhaps completely false. If I'm living my life with those two observations active, now I've opened the doorway to learning. Now I'm inviting life to teach me. And that's what we're encouraging people to do, and that's why we so strongly recommend that you share your questions and comments with us, and how we appreciate it so deeply. There's a thing they call the Dunning-Kruger effect. And the Dunning-Kruger effect is the pattern where people who have very little knowledge about a field of study, but they've got a little bit of knowledge, but very little, they tend to overestimate how much they know. They tend to think they are far more well-read, far more knowledgeable in an area than they actually are. And the other side of that is that people who have extensive knowledge, deep research and study in a field, they have become aware of how broad and deep the field is, and they understand more than most how little they actually know. So they tend to underestimate their knowledge base or their expertise. And people with very little knowledge tend to overestimate their knowledge base and their expertise. So it's a well-known phenomenon, process, pattern, you might say. It's been thoroughly researched. It happens on a regular basis, and you can understand how that might develop. So in defense against the Dunning-Kruger effect, I want to keep myself in the space that Way of Mastery and Course in Miracles might invite me to, which is to say, I don't really know what anything is or is for. And I'm willing to learn. I'm asking to be taught. So, we have plenty of time for comments or questions. Please feel free to type a comment into the app if you're here, or if you're listening on live.needle.com on the internet /Mindshifters Radio, that you'll need to download the app to connect with us. And in lieu of anybody typing a comment or raising a hand to talk, I will move back into reading from the book A Walk in the Physical. Where we left off had to do with, and I think I'm going to repeat the section on fear and the ego. And the text reads, the ego is part of the self that wishes to protect itself as an individual, as that individual is having the alien experience of separation. The ego is not a separate thing. It is an internal structure that arises as a response to fear. The ego seeks to relieve the individual from fear by attempting to reclaim power that seems to have been lost, but was in fact never truly lost. As Guy Finley likes to point out in several of his talks, when you listen to fear tell you what to do, fear will never help you get rid of fear. Fear will only, always and forever tell you what to do so that fear can run your life another day. Here in the book, A Walk in the Physical, Christian goes on and says, the ego's main activities include establishing things like belief and claiming false power and justifying itself. Fear occurs when the soul engages in experience of form that it has not yet fully integrated, and fear reflects an opportunity for expansion. So if I go into a situation that I interpret as scary or dangerous or treacherous in some way, and I generate fear, that situation is one way to look at it is it's an invitation for me to expand my capacity to stay loving in a more difficult, a more challenging set of circumstances. Christian goes on and says, fear occurs when the individual buys into perceptions that are not in alignment with the individual's fundamental true nature. Fear occurs when the individual believes and buys into perceptions that are not in alignment with the individual's fundamental true nature. This reminds me of Guy Finley. He says, in order for fear to arise within a human being, before fear arises in a human being, the human being must buy into these two false beliefs. The first false belief is that the person, the situation, the life dynamic that's in front of the person is bigger than that person. And he says this is a false belief. You are part of an infinite consciousness. All of this is arising within your conscious experience. You are bigger than any situation that you face. So it's a false belief that says, this is too big for me to handle. The second false belief, Guy Finley says, has to be in place in order for a human being to generate fear, is that the person reaches the false conclusion that whatever this situation or person is in front of them, they're there to steal something from the person that the person absolutely needs to survive and be whole and complete, or that situation or that person standing in front of me is there to prevent me from accomplishing or acquiring something that I need to feel whole and complete. And he says both of these are false. There's nothing of value that can be added unto you and nothing of value that can be taken from you. And there's nothing you will ever encounter that's bigger than your true nature. Your true self, your consciousness, is bigger than everything that arises within your consciousness. And then, to come back to Christian's work, he validates that by saying the individual's true nature is immortal, powerful, free, deeply loved, and connected to everything. Christian writes, fear can only come when the individual's identity becomes, quote, tied up, close quotes, with the forms of the local experience. In other words, this illusion of separation. Fear can only occur when the individual does not have conscious awareness of who he truly is, of who she truly is. Capital L love, which is the capital T truth, dispels all fear. Fear is not conquered by resisting reality or by setting up divisions. Fear is conquered by willingly experiencing reality, or in Michael Ryce's words, actuality, exactly as it is. Fear wanes or even vanishes as the individual fully allows all experience, and as the individual experientially finds his or her true nature beneath the many stories of the local play of earth, that fear is completely eliminated. When that happens, fear is processed and it's overcome, and love and joy naturally expand. Now, I know there are many people who think this is hogwash, to put it gently. We had some people in our support group last night who were having a very difficult time with the concept that all events are neutral and that it's possible to lovingly, joyfully accept everything as it unfolds in life, because they're caught focused on specifically and very exclusively the physical realm and their judgments about it. So please pay attention to what's going on inside your energy system, some call it a body, as you listen to these readings. And notice if there's tightness, if there's tension, if there's disagreement, if there's frustration, if there's anger. And breathe and soften. And here the invitation would be to start asking yourself, how am I creating this unpleasant experience, the tightness or the tension or the anger or the upset? I just checked the app, and Don is asking where I am in the book. So I have a Kindle version of the book, A Walk in the Physical, and I'm reading from the Kindle version, page 29, or the segment. It's not one of the essays, but it's a segment numbered IX, or 9 in Roman numeral, titled Fear and the Ego, and I just finished that segment. And now I'm about to read on Roman numeral 10, titled The Nature of the Human Experience. Hopefully that's what you were looking for, Don. So, the nature of the human experience offers a unique opportunity for the spirit to make choices within a rich context. The human experience is just one unique way in which the spirit may experience creaturehood. The human condition offers a unique opportunity to experience a specific set of biological limitations and a particular cognitive environment. The only way for the spirit to actually know what it is like to be human is to be human, to take on human form. The only way for the spirit to experientially learn how to successfully exist through and express its true nature through being human is to take on the form of truly being human. The human experience is heavily defined by the local physical body. Per the rules set and the constraints of the physical reality, the body's state in every moment colors all information experienced by the consciousness, and the body's state limits what the consciousness can do in the physical environment. Physical changes to the body can increase or decrease those limitations. Our experience on Earth provides valuable feedback to help us experientially understand the quality of our intent. I don't know what it was this morning, but something happened this morning as I was walking to my car, and I got a download of sorts about this word intent and the way that Christian refers to it, and Christian says his teachers talk about it, so that your intention in any given moment is far more important than any specific action you take. Now, as soon as I said that, I had, my own natural response was kind of a negative pushback against this. And yet, it was kind of a felt sensation of an aha and a realization that there's something really big and important here. So when we were reading this book, A Walk in the Physical, and Christian talks about intent, he talks about developing, nurturing, expanding, purifying our quality of intent. And every time I read that in this book, I think my intention to express my true nature as love in these various situations in which I find myself. So he says, our experience on Earth provides valuable feedback to help us experientially understand. Not intellectually understand, not create a bunch of words around it, but to have this felt sense, deep resonance within our energy system about the quality of our intent and the impact that has on our higher self and our experience of life in the moment. He goes on and says, loving intent tends to yield a joyful experience. In parentheses, he says, it is in alignment with our true nature, close parentheses. Fearful intent tends to yield a negative experience. In parentheses, he says, fearful intent is in alignment with the illusion of separation, close parentheses. Now, many people would say that fear itself was born in the process of creating the dream of separation, the illusion of separation. So in other words, when we're in a non-physical state, when we have what Christian Sundberg and so many others who had near-death or near-life experiences, what they report is being conscious without being in a body. Over and over again, the reports indicate there is no fear in that state. That in the non-physical state, there is no fear. That fear is a product of taking on the dream of separation, on agreeing to take on the veil of forgetfulness and amnesia as we come into the physical realm. Christian goes on and says, we never find complete satisfaction in the objects of the world because what we really seek is the unity and wholeness that is native, it's fundamental to our deeper being. That wholeness is actually never absent, even when we seem completely lost within the thinking mind and within the forms and the stories of this human life. This is what our teachings tell us over and over again, that you were never separated from your source. You can't ever be separated from your source or that which gives rise to you. Christian goes on in this essay, or this section of the book, it's not one of the essays, he writes, we experience suffering when we associate with, and we, quote, lose ourselves, close quote, in the forms. And what he means by forms are thoughts, stories, beliefs, objects, and feelings, etc. And yet our very nature itself is always the nature of love, joy, creativity, and freedom. Even while we experience separation on earth, there is no true separation. And what just, came to me as I read that was the thought that I am absolutely certain that each of my sons have times when they feel shame or anger or fear or sadness or hurt, or they feel like they've disappointed me or someone else important in their life. And they probably have thoughts that I don't appreciate them and I don't have affection for them. And yet, there really isn't anything either one of them could do that would lead to me not having deep affection and appreciation for them. So this is, we always try to work to understand things through our personal experience. It's part of the nature of being in this realm of the physical. And so if I want to understand how I could never be separate from my source, I get this little intuitive hit that, just like my sons could never do anything that would eliminate my connection to them, my emotional affection for them and appreciation for them and all they've been through and all they're doing with their life. So Christian goes on and says, even while we deeply appreciate or we deeply experience separation on earth, there is never any true separation. There's no such thing as privacy. This is a big, big message in the way of mastery. All minds are joined. There is no privacy. All information is known and remains accessible by spirit. Death is the end of the physical experience, and at the same time it's a death of the physical experience, or the ending of the physical experience. It is a lifting of the constraints that consciousness bought into in order to have the experience of being human. Death is not the end, but in fact it's a wonderful transition to higher states of being. Metaphorically, death is like taking off a constraining spacesuit and returning to the freedom of what one really is. Health is our natural state of being. Over time, we always naturally return to wholeness and health, even if physical death happens. Oftentimes, we can encourage the healing process by locating and releasing our own barriers. When life can flow through us, healing can occur naturally. So, here's this idea that health is our natural state of being. And over time, health always returns, even if physical death happens. In other words, your health is not tied to your physical body. If you think you're just a physical body, then this sentence doesn't make any sense at all. How could health return even if physical death occurs? Well, because he's talking about the health, the wholeness, the conscious awareness of this, of truth of who you are as an infinite being of consciousness and awareness. So my mind wants to talk a little bit about how you are not just your physical body, and how the Way of Mastery says who you are had no beginning and no end. There's a segment in the 4th chapter of the Way of Mastery where it says, the next time somebody asks you who you are, please don't give them a name or a label. Don't say I'm a Democrat or a Republican. Don't say I'm a man or a woman. Don't say I have this age, that I'm a psychologist. Don't say that I'm from, Illinois. Tell them the truth. The next time somebody asks you who you are, tell them something to the effect of, I am infinite and eternal. I've never been born and I will never taste death. I shine forth as a sunbeam to the sun. I am the effect of the Creator's love, and I stand before you to extend that love to you. In that set of words, in that pointing with my finger toward the moon, it doesn't say too much, but it can shake the cobwebs in my thought, because I've spent so much time, seemingly, to my experience, so much time in this physical body, that I've come to believe that all I am is the physical body. And yet, over the millennia, there have been these spiritual teachings that try and point us to the truth that we're not just the physical body. So, the next segment in the book is titled Intent versus Intellect in the Context of Love and Being. Intent versus intellect in the context of love and being. Christian writes, we come to wield loving intent. We're here for the purpose of extending this loving intent. He writes, loving intent is not itself intellectual. Love and fear can operate through an intellectual context. However, intent itself is deeper than the objects it works with, including both physical objects as things and intellectual objects like ideas or beliefs. So loving intent is deeper than the objects it works with, whether it's a physical object or a thought or a belief. Our deepest, he put this in quotes, being level, close quotes. Our deepest being level motivation is what is important. This is what was coming to me this morning as I was walking towards my car. What I say and do may be interpreted by someone else as bad or wrong or rude or selfish. And what I actually say and do is nowhere near as important as the intention I'm holding as I do it. And I know I have my own mind throws up arguments against that. One of them is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Now, this is the way I would look at this is that this is on a whole different level of scale. And yes, at a certain level of scale, I know full well in my own life and in my interactions with others how the road to hell can be paved with good intentions. Now, my way of understanding that is, I say I want to do something good, and yet for whatever reason, I keep getting blocked from doing it. Or I give in to the impulse to just be lazy or to strike out in anger or whatever. So at that level of scale, the road to hell can be paved with good intentions. And at another level of scale altogether, my intention as I set out to do something is far more important than the actual words or beliefs actions that actually come out of me. So just to back up and read that again, we come to wield loving intent. We come to extend loving intent in the physical realm. We come from non-physical into the physical, in Christian's way of thinking about it, specifically, primarily, to extend love. And then he writes, loving intent is not itself intellectual. Love and fear can operate through an intellectual context. However, intent itself is deeper than the objects it works with. It's deeper than the physical objects, your body and the things that you might use with your body, and it's deeper than the intellectual objects like ideas and beliefs. Our deepest motivation for being here is what's important. Our being level motivation, that we're here to extend love, is most important. And he says, we come to earth to execute and embody a quality of being. We come into the physical from the non-physical to be love. Capital L, love, this energy of creation. To extend love, this energy of creation, as it can be expressed in form. And then he writes, that can mean any number of ideas or actions. Love includes a large number of qualities, including compassion, freedom, vulnerability, responsibility, courage, humility, discernment, tenacity, gentleness, strength, honesty, willingness, and caring. That's the short list, right? Love includes all of those things. And then he writes, love is always about the other. Now that's a play on words, because there is no other, right? There are these ancient teachings from the Eastern gurus where the disciple comes to the master and says, but what about the anger of my brother? And the master says, there is no other. There is no brother. We're all connected. We're all one mind. We're all part of the one consciousness. So instead of saying love is always about the other, you might say love is always acting from the recognition that we are one. Then Christian goes on and writes, human intellectual learning is generally limited to the objects and the, quote, rule set, close quote, of the physical universe in which the human character resides. Since that physical system is not fundamental. What's fundamental? Consciousness is fundamental. The physical system arises within consciousness. The physical system is not fundamental. And that physical system is a subset of something larger in the consciousness space. Because of that, no object or set of objects in that physical system can fully speak to the big picture. Capital B, big, capital P, picture. He writes, it is not possible for the thinking human intellect, which relies on local system assumptions like distance and linear time, for instance, it's not possible for the human thinking intellect to fully conceive of the big picture. He writes here, to fully intellectually conceive of the big picture. However, the mind of the individual can know it personally when it is not operating within the forms and constraints of the physical, because the individual's consciousness is never separated from the source, which contains all knowledge. The learning, in quotes, learning that the Spirit comes down to do on earth is not intellectual. It's this deeply experiential, felt sense It's a learning of the capital B being by engaging in the process of being. I remember I have a very vivid memory of being in undergrad. One of my psych professors, who was also the chief probation officer, who had had me sworn in as a probation officer for my last 2 years of college. And he and another new professor, young, they were both relatively young, as college professors go, they were talking about how those of us who were gathered at a professor's house on a weekend night, rather than partying in dorms with drugs and alcohol and trying to get laid or whatever, that those of us who aspired for a higher education and maybe a doctoral degree or whatever were just absolutely ignorant about the process, and that they were joking between each other in front of us about how we had no clue. And I thought at that time, they're wrong. That's because I did not have the firsthand experience. And then for a number of occasions after that, throughout my pursuing a doctoral career, a doctoral degree, I just kept getting hit with the realization that, this is nothing like what I thought it was going to be. And that most of the people that I'm interacting with who are professors are nothing like the lofty individuals that I thought they would have to be in order to get a degree and get a doctorate and then get a license. That not only did most of the professors I had in graduate school have clay feet, they weren't even really nice people to be around. They were really wounded and sometimes angry. So here's this statement from Christian Sundberg that says, the learning that the Spirit comes to do on earth is not intellectual. All of the learning I had done until I actually made it through the doctorate and then made it through the licensing, all of it was just intellectual. It's what I thought was supposed to happen and how it was supposed to be. And the actuality of it was light years difference from what I had fantasized. This is why I talk so often in this work about the unproductive nature of putting yourself down or putting anybody else on a pedestal. So there's a comment on the app. I apologize for the delay in this. It's from 5 minutes ago or so, if the app is correct, but it doesn't show me when there are comments. So the question is this intention what we are thinking while doing something? I ask because I carry a lot of hope in most action and then back out as someone responds in a way that is not the action I would call accepting to what my hopes are. Or, well, I am fearful of what might happen. Yes, and the question is, does this make sense? It makes sense to me in this way. These things exist in levels of scale. What does that mean? What is a level of scale? One of the best examples for this that I've heard other teachers use is the idea of authority, and authority, let's say, in a military sense. So if you are a private, right, you are the lowest rank in a military unit. You've got a supervisor, and your supervisor has a supervisor, And that supervisor might be a commander or a captain or a lieutenant colonel or a colonel, and so these levels of scale. Now, does the sergeant have any authority? Yes. Does the sergeant have authority over the captain? No. Does the captain have authority over the lieutenant colonel? No. Etc. So, but they do have authority in a way, at a sense. So the intention we're talking about here, he's talking about at a very deep level, at your soul level. You're here, he says, his guides have taught him, that you and I and everybody else, the only reason, fundamental reason, to take on physical form, to come out of this nirvana, glorious bliss state that they call, the non-physical consciousness. The only reason to come out of non-physical consciousness into the physical realm, where we have all of these struggles and the aches and pains of the body and the difficulty communicating with others, etc., is so that we can practice holding on to loving intent in more and more challenging and difficult situations. Why would we do that? Just like we go into a gym and start lifting weights. We do it because the more we practice and lift heavier and heavier weights, the more we develop the strength that allows us to lift even more weights or to do other activities more freely, more effortlessly. So at that fundamental level, you're here. He's trying to wake us up to the fact that every one of us has come here with the intention of expressing our loving intent more clearly, more effortlessly, more fully in increasingly difficult situations. What's the pinnacle of that? Well, there's this fable about Jesus, and Jesus was being tortured and about to be hung on a cross, and he holds love for the people that are placing the crown of thorns on him and whipping him with cat o' nine tails and driving nails through his hands and feet. And he says, hey, this is all okay. These people don't understand what they're doing. At a certain level of scale, these people think that what they're doing is right. And so that fable about Jesus and his life on the cross and the suffering and death is a story about someone who has, you might say, gotten really good at or even perfected the ability to hold a loving set of thoughts and intentions in some of the most extreme physical torturous situations. So at a fundamental level, Christian is saying, we're all here to do that without necessarily getting whipped in a crown of thorns and crucified. We're here to face increasingly challenging physical constraints and to practice choosing for love, even though, as the Way of Mastery would say, the building is crumbling around us, or the bank account gets emptied by scammers, or the body is falling apart because of some ache or pain or illness. So at that level of scale, yes. And yet, at this other level of scale, in my conscious interactions with my people around me in my life, I may slip out of that loving intent. I may buy into the fact that this person buy into the false story that this person or situation outside of me is causing my upset, and I have every right to rage at them. And I have every right to attack them. In that instance, my intention is to strike out at somebody, and my intention is not loving. So at that level of scale, I'm not holding to the ability to express my deeper level of intent. So the question is intention what we're thinking when we're doing something? Yes. And then he writes, I ask because I carry a lot of action. and then I back out if someone responds in a way that is not the way you would call accepting. So if I'm understanding the question you're asking, this is exactly what Christian's talking about. If you back out of something that you start to do with good intent because you are trying to appease someone outside of you, then you're backing away from being loving or expressing your intent to be loving or holding them in a blessing or asking how to be a blessing to yourself and others. If you back away from that because of what you interpret as somebody else's response, you need practice. You need to, metaphorically speaking, go to the gym and start lifting heavier weights and do it in a planned way so that you're not tearing your muscles down without a chance for them to recover and get stronger. And you practice holding that loving intent and staying the course of doing what you believe is right and loving, even when the people around you don't give you the response that you would hope they would give you. So I hope that's useful as a response to your questions. Thank you for that question. I believe it's Brett. And I'll go back here briefly to the reading from Christian and try and get through this segment in the few minutes we have left. He writes, "Our deepest being level motivation is what's important. We come to Earth to execute and embody a quality of being. We come here to be love. And that can mean any number of ideas or actions. Love includes all of these things I just listed: compassion, freedom, willingness, caring, etc. Human intellectual learning is generally limited to these rule sets of the physical universe, since that physical system is not fundamental. We're not trained to realize that our physical body and the physical experience is not our true nature. And so we can't use that to speak truly about the big picture. It's not possible for the thinking human intellect, which relies on local assumptions like linear time and linear distance, to fully intellectually conceive of the big picture. However, the mind of the individual can have that felt experience of it whenever it's not operating within the forms and constraints of this physical world, because the individual's consciousness is never separate from the source, and the source contains all knowledge. The learning that the Spirit comes to do on earth is not intellectual, it is experiential. It is learning by being. Being in the middle of something and consciously choosing for love, even if the people and things outside of you are not acting as though they are aware of their true nature as love. One of the things that is in, I believe it's the third lesson of the Way of Mastery, it talks about how we can actively work to dismantle every judgment and every perception we have, and then learn to live more in this wide open state of just asking to be shown, without reaching thought-based conclusions about things. Just this understanding that we are a part of this gift of life unfolding. We are a part of the miracle of the creative energy that some call love as it expresses in form, and so is everyone and everything that we interact with. And when I can see that true nature of everyone and everything I interact with, and then choose to cooperate only with that true nature, that's what the ancient Aramaics called humility. That ability to look for and see the highest and best in another or in any given situation, and then to choose to cooperate only with that highest and best. The more I do that, the more I have the lived experience of the capital T truth of this life and of the benefits of living from that awareness. And the more I do that, the better my life experience has gotten over the years. So we've got 4 or 5 minutes left. Comments, questions, answers, testimonials. Here's hoping I'm being heard. There's been a number of people who've popped on and off the app throughout this hour. I've checked a few times. No one has put a hand up to speak directly, and there have been very few, only 2 people typing comments. Thank you for those. Is this landing well for you? Does it make sense? Is it resonating deeply with you? And it's funny, we don't even have words. I don't have words for the kind of experience I had this morning. And I'll just say it again. Walking to my car, I've had this kind of a full body shift. And the words that seemed to go along with it were something like, oh, that's what's important. Intent at that fundamental level is more important. And for all I know, bouncing around in my mind for stifling a sneeze, bouncing around in my mind at the subconscious level for an hour or 2 before that in my preparations for the morning and meditation and whatnot, might have been some thoughts about situations in my past where I was intending to be loving, but what I said and did or what I failed to do was not interpreted that way by other human beings. It might have been something like that. I don't know. However, the experience goes beyond words all the time. It's like we talk about, you can't describe to somebody what your favorite meal is like with any kind of accuracy or have it transfer your experience to them through words, because your experience goes way beyond the words. You can't give somebody the experience of eating, chocolate fudge ice cream, if that's one of your favorite things, unless they've actually had the experience. So you can't say words that give them the experience. We are here, Christian Sundberg would say, we're having this experience in physical bodies for the purpose of being able to experience ourselves as loving in more and more challenging physical constraint systems. Whether it's a social dynamic where there's anger coming at us, or it's a physical body that's got aches and pains, or is functioning less and less fluidly than it did in the past. And our intent, he says, in coming here is to choose for love even in those situations. So I realize we're down to the last minute or so. I will remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Please let your app close out and come back to listen to Michael and Jeanie for the second hour. Blessings.